All right, let's jump right into a really fascinating, kind of provocative idea. We're going to talk about why some of the smartest, most creative people throughout history actually chose to be alone. And no, it's not about being antisocial. It's about tapping into a kind of power that, honestly, most of us are taught to fear. I mean, just think about it for a second. Have you ever really noticed that the people who seem to have a clearer grasp on reality often prefer their own company? They're not always the shy ones in the corner. It's something else. It's like they've found something really important in the quiet. And yeah, the truth behind why they do this, it's actually a lot more unsettling than you'd think. It's because they've realized that solitude, when you choose it, is like a secret weapon for your mind. So to really understand why being alone can be so powerful, we have to look at the flip side first. We need to talk about the hidden cost, the intellectual price we all pay for being constantly connected to other people. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer just laid it out there with this quote. Now, at first glance, it sounds pretty dramatic, right? But he's getting at something so crucial. Our most original, unfiltered, honest thoughts can really only come to the surface when we're totally free from the influence of others. You know how this works. The second you're in a conversation, even with friends, your brain starts making these tiny calculations. You soften an opinion here, you laugh at a joke you don't really get there, all just to keep things smooth, to avoid friction. It's almost automatic. And this contrast right here, this is at the very heart of it all. On one side, you've got your own mind with all its potential for raw, honest, original thought. But the moment you enter the group mind, there's this immense, invisible pressure to conform. It's not evil or anything. It's just a basic human drive for harmony that ends up sanding down our sharpest ideas. Schopenhauer had a pretty brutal term for this, the will of the masses. He saw it as a kind of slow intellectual suicide. We start unconsciously just borrowing opinions and tastes from the people around us, until one day we can barely even hear our own original thoughts anymore. Okay, so if the group tends to water down our thinking, what's the alternative? Well, this brings us to a really important distinction. We're not talking about the pain of loneliness, we're talking about the art, the empowering choice of solitude. Getting this difference is absolutely key. Loneliness is a feeling of lack. It's an emptiness that's forced on you. Solitude, on the other hand, is a state of abundance. It's a freedom that you choose, not because you have no one, but because you have a rich inner world that you're excited to spend time in. And how do they build this inner world? With books, with reflection, with art, by wrestling with huge ideas on their own. They've basically cultivated this entire private universe inside their own head, which turns silence from something to be scared of into a place of incredible wealth. I mean, this chart really shows the problem perfectly. For most of us, our mental energy is just scattered everywhere, performing for others, drowning in digital noise, endless trivial chatter. And look, it leaves this tiny, tiny sliver for actual deep thought. See, the solitary person understands that their attention is their most valuable currency. Choosing solitude isn't about running away. It's a strategic move. It's about protecting that mental energy and investing it in creating, learning, and thinking, instead of just letting it leak out all over the place. So, does this actually work in the real world? Oh yeah. History is just littered with stories of how this kind of deliberate isolation became the very furnace where genius was forged. Get this, Isaac Newton. When the Great Plague hit in 1665, Cambridge University shut down and he was forced to go home and isolate. For most people, that would be a nightmare. For Newton, it became the single most productive period of his entire life. In that solitude, he laid the groundwork for his theories on calculus, on light, on gravity. Or think about Friedrich Nietzsche. He would escape to the Swiss Alps for these long, solitary walks. And it was in that total quiet, away from anyone's judgment, that his mind was free to wander into really forbidden territory, to come up with the radical ideas that completely changed philosophy. So, you see the pattern here? Solitude just dismantles the invisible mental fences we all live behind. When there's no audience, your mind is free to chase crazy ideas that have no practical value, to protect these weird, fragile thoughts from being crushed by what everyone else thinks. It's the ultimate training ground for becoming an independent thinker. But let's be real, this path is not for the faint of heart. The price for this kind of freedom is that it can be incredibly lonely. When you're playing with ideas that nobody else understands, you get zero validation. It takes a ton of courage to trust your own gut when you're all alone. And this whole journey into solitude leads to one final, really profound result. A unique and, yeah, sometimes terrifying kind of clarity, a new way of seeing. When you step away from the constant noise, you start to see society in a completely different way. Schopenhauer called it philosophical vision. It's the ability to see the machinery behind our social rituals, to see the patterns of fear and desire that drive everyone, but without getting caught up in the drama yourself. From inside the crowd, all the daily dramas feel so urgent, so important, so emotional. But from the solitary view, they start to look like predictable patterns. The illusion kind of loses its grip, and things that once seemed so significant can suddenly feel, well, a little hollow. And this is where Schopenhauer gives another warning. He says this clarity is both a gift and a burden. It's a gift because you see the truth, but it's a burden because once you see the patterns, it's hard to take the everyday social game as seriously anymore. And this brings us full circle. This is why those brilliant minds can sometimes seem so detached, maybe even cold. It's almost never because of arrogance or contempt. It's a side effect of clarity. It's what happens when you see through the illusions that keep the rest of us comfortable. Which leads us to this one final great paradox. The very people who seem the most distant from society, the scientists in their labs, the philosophers on their walks, the artists in their studios, they're often the ones who end up giving society its most valuable gifts, the breakthroughs that change everything. So, the next time you see someone who is just strangely content in their own company, ask yourself this question. Are they running away from life? Or are they one of the few who are brave enough to be running toward truth?